You're watching World Talks on TVP World. I'm Aaron Dahmen. Volodymyr Zelensky says a US document on security guarantees for Ukraine is completely ready, and Kyiv is waiting for a time and place for it to be signed. The Ukrainian president making the remarks in the same week that Ukrainian, Russian and American delegates met face-to-face in the Middle East, and Donald Trump unveiled his so-called Board for Peace. Joining me for more is Garvan Walshe, CEO of Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
So as we go to air, we're hearing President Zelensky say that those UAE negotiations covered, quote, important issues but complex political matters remain unresolved. Are we seeing progress in your mind, or is this kind of a photo opportunity for Russia?
I think the complicated political matter is Russia doesn't want to end the war. So until that is resolved, we're not really going to see much progress towards peace. This is about a diplomatic game for who takes the blame for the collapse of the negotiations more than, at this stage, I think, likely breakthroughs on the ground. At the moment, Russia feels that it's still just about, though at high cost, advancing. Ukraine is able to defend against them. The thing is, Trump wants a photo op, so we can give him a photo op, and I think that we all need to hope that it's clear that Russia gets blamed for the failure of these negotiations.
Because even as, of course, Vladimir Putin sends his delegates to speak with Ukraine and America in Abu Dhabi, he's relentlessly attacking Kyiv and Kharkiv. So is there any world in which you see these negotiations as genuine, or do you think they are some kind of a facade?
I think there's some kind of a facade. I mean, Putin clearly doesn't want negotiations. If he wanted negotiations, he wouldn't be pursuing this kind of terror bombing of the Ukrainian capital. Even if Zelensky is forced to agree to some kind of deal, he will still have to put this to a referendum in Ukraine, and they're unlikely to accept it. The reality is that the level of American influence on Ukraine has gone down significantly because Trump withdrew most American support for Ukraine as soon as he got into office. Without that kind of leverage, it's much harder for the US administration to push Ukraine into agreeing an unsatisfactory peace.
It does appear that another round of talks will take place in the Middle East next weekend. Why does, and some people will wonder this, why does Ukraine still come back to the table when Moscow's attacks refuse to let up, and as you say, it all appears to be a bit of a facade?
It's always important to be seen to be willing to seek peace. It's always important to show the world that Ukraine, as the victim of this war, is willing to find a reasonable solution to it and to expose the cruel imperialistic aggression that the Russians have. Because even though Ukraine is willing to negotiate, Russia is still bombing its cities, it's still destroying its energy infrastructure, it's still trying to force people to freeze. And Ukraine knows that it can't accept this. And Ukraine also knows that it has to fight for every inch of its territory.
Now, there are these reports that a US document on security guarantees is completely ready to be signed. I just want to play you a quick soundbite of President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Mm-hmm.
For us, security guarantees come first. These are bilateral security guarantees from the United States. The document is 100% ready, and we are waiting for our partners to confirm the date and place when we will sign it. After that, the document will go through ratification in the US Congress and the Ukrainian Parliament in line with our agreements. The second security guarantees for Ukraine are European security guarantees, a coalition of the willing and, most importantly, membership in the European Union.
Will locking in these security guarantees of some sort be a game changer for how this war, and I guess the negotiations to end it, move from here?
I think they're likely to be the kind of guarantees that Moscow won't accept because if they actually require US involvement, that won't be something that Moscow is keen on. If they actually require European troops on Ukrainian soil, that's something Moscow has already rejected repeatedly. So I think this is really about positioning in the negotiations. If the Americans say they will guarantee certain things, well, that's great. They're like with everything with the Trump administration, it has to be taken with a very hefty cavern of salt because the guy doesn't stick to any agreements he makes. He rather uses them as opportunities for extortion. I think this is very much part of the diplomatic effort to expose Russia as the party that's unwilling to come to terms and unwilling to make peace and unwilling to abandon its war of aggression.
You're saying Russia would be unlikely to agree to these security guarantees, obviously also saying that these talks are somewhat of a facade. Is there a risk that all this talk of rebuilding, of integrating Ukraine into Europe, of security guarantees, that it's kind of cart before the horse, that we're talking about everything that happens after a ceasefire without actually working towards a ceasefire itself?
Indeed, because the way you work towards a ceasefire is you actually create a situation on the battlefield that means one side or the other wants to actually start making concessions for peace. And at the moment, we don't have that. Instead, we have a very bitter war. We have Europe continuing to support Ukraine and increasing its support for Ukraine, increasing its support for intelligence, for other things that Ukraine needs, and Russia continuing to with Chinese assistance and with African mercenaries and North Korean support, trying to shovel as many men into the front line as possible, where they get destroyed by Ukrainian drones. But Russia keeps finding more of them, even as its economy comes under greater pressure. I think the real breaking point is going to be towards the end of this year, when Russia's economy will really be on a knife edge, and then we have to see whether they can continue the war effort after then. Right now they still can, but the pressure is going to get higher, inflation is getting higher, labour is getting extremely scarce. The amount of money that needs to be spent to persuade men to sign up to very certain death or maiming is going up, and how Russia manages to afford this as sanctions continue to bite remains a very open question. Nevertheless, Ukraine needs to be seen, especially by the Americans, as trying to look for peace, even though at the moment Russia is unlikely to put anything on the table that makes peace realistic.
You say that by the end of the year, Russia will really feel that pressure. I mean, on the ground in Ukraine, the country appears to be facing its harshest winter yet, right, as the Kremlin is targeting that critical energy infrastructure. How badly does Kyiv need a ceasefire right now? I mean, how long can Ukraine keep fighting in these conditions?
I think Ukraine can keep fighting in these conditions. They're very tough conditions, but it knows what happens if it withdraws from territory. It sees what Russia has done to its cities. It sees the massacres it's perpetrated, the deportation of children, and it can't let this happen, and Ukrainians are going to continue to fight, even in very, very difficult circumstances. The important thing is that they are given support, that people are able to keep warm, that the population can move around to places further away from attack. And what matters then is we start to think about how we make Ukraine stronger and better able to resist Russian attacks next year, because it's clear that next year we have to do better in supporting them than we were able to do this year. We didn't give them enough. This isn't really acceptable from Ukraine's allies, and we need to understand what went wrong this time and how we can make sure this doesn't happen again.
And when you're saying next year, do you mean 2026 or 2027?
I mean the next winter.
Are you confident that Europe as a whole, and I guess America too, that it will put its best foot forward in supporting Ukraine?
I think there's two things. I mean, I think Europe had a bit of a shock 2 weeks ago with Trump's attempts to annex Greenland. I think that's brought home to a lot of people that this administration can't be relied on. It's brought home to a lot of people that Europe needs to radically and quickly increase its own ability to secure itself, and that also means securing Ukraine, because a Europe supported by Ukraine is much stronger than a Europe in which Ukraine has been defeated. And that means that they're starting to realize that they need to increase the level of support more, and the public is starting to realize this, I think, too. There were many people, especially in European diplomatic circles, who hoped that we could somehow go back to business as usual. I think after Greenland, it's becoming increasingly clear that's not possible. All that being said, there are non-Trump elements of the United States. We see the National Defense Authorization Act that requires the US to continue to put troops in Eastern Europe against the wishes of the Pentagon and against the wishes of Donald Trump himself. There are Republicans in Congress, there are American governors, there's the American defense industry. All these parts of the United States understand the importance of the transatlantic relationship. So although it's very seriously damaged by Trump, it's not necessarily gone forever. What we have to recognize is that the transatlantic relationship is now getting rebalanced in a way that Europe is going to have to play a bigger role. Europe is now understanding that it's starting to play a bigger role, so we'll have a more equal transatlantic relationship going forward in the best scenario. Obviously, in the worst case scenario, you see increasing unrest in the United States, a US unable to focus abroad because it's trying to contain very difficult domestic situation. We've seen what's happened in Minnesota. There's some rumours that the next city that will be targeted for ICE is Philadelphia. And if Minnesotans are known as being nice, Philadelphians are not. It could get very ugly if they attempt to try the same tricks in Philadelphia that they've been trying in Minnesota so far.
And what about this Board of Peace? Does it have any potential, or is it purely a Donald Trump vanity project? And I ask that with the vanity project because I noted someone pointing out that at Davos, all the Davos branding was gone, and suddenly it was America's Board of Peace branding that suddenly popped up at this Davos event. It became a Donald Trump event, didn't it?
It's a Donald Trump event, just like the Melania TV film show is a Melania event. This isn't a serious act of policy. This is part of Donald Trump having a show for himself. That's really what motivates Donald Trump more than anything else, the idea of spectacle, the idea of being at the centre of attention. And if this is a way where he can be at the centre of attention without it actually causing too much damage, well, maybe it's a good thing.
Garvan Walshe, CEO of Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats, thank you as always for your time here on TVP World.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for World Talks. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more news and analysis. I'm Aaron Dahmen. Goodbye for now.